Welcome to Primate Instruments. We're located in Mississauga, Ontario, Canada. We're the developers and manufacturers of novel medical devices. The purpose of this video is to introduce a new biopsy forceps that is capable of taking multiple samples in one insertion through the endoscope. It's our MultiCROC. MultiCROC biopsy forceps is very similar to a standard biopsy forceps. It has a handle, plastic handle, plastic-coated spring catheter, and the jaws. The handle actuates the jaws, just like in a standard biopsy forceps. The forceps is made to obtain multiple biopsy samples in a single insertion through the channel of the endoscope. The big difference between the standard and the MultiCROC biopsy forceps is the patented design of the jaw mechanism. In order to show and explain the differences on how the MultiCROC operates, I have a 3D printed model that's in 10:1 scale. The jaws of the head assembly in the MultiCROC are longer than in the standard biopsy forceps, but the overall length of the whole assembly is very similar to the standard biopsy forceps. Therefore, the forceps passes through the channel of the endoscope in a similar fashion as the standard biopsy forceps. The jaws open to a smaller angle than the standard biopsy forceps. The opening of the jaws at the tips is approximately 4 to 4.5 millimeters. As mentioned, the jaws are longer in the MultiCROC biopsy forceps. If we were to introduce a longer jaws in the standard biopsy forceps, the clamping force at the end of the jaws would be greatly diminished. It has to do with geometry and the vectors and the way the forces work. In order to overcome that, our patented mechanism moves the jaws slightly back. This movement is approximately 1 millimeter in length. By moving the jaws back into the ferrule, we exert a very high clamping force in this area that is transmitted into the clamping force at the tips of the jaws, those tips, by the actual tissue. In fact, as measured, the clamping force at the end of the jaws of the MultiCROC is about 35% higher than the clamping force of the Boston Scientific Jaws 4 biopsy forceps. The back movement of the jaws into this housing is virtually unnoticeable to the user. Sometimes the first-time users, depending on the actual orientation of the device, may have difficulty realizing whether the jaws are open or closed. If we look like this, it may appear that they are not open. It is just a matter of getting used to the device, and the learning curve is very short. And the user immediately understands and knows whether the device is open or not. Let me explain the multi-sampling feature of the MultiCROC and how it works. In order to take the biopsies, open the device, approach the site as you would normally do with the standard biopsy forceps, close and pull. The first sample is stored in between the jaws of the MultiCROC. We repeat the cycle, and the second tissue sample pushes the first one in. The third pushes those two back until the jaws are fully loaded with the specimen. The consecutively collected samples are stored in between the jaws. The tissue has some mucus on it, and it's sticky, and it stays between the elongated jaws. To remove the specimens from the jaws, simply open and shake in the jar with formalin, as the specimen will easily fall out, as there is no fenestration or any needle that will make the specimens stick into the jaws. Often there's a question whether the specimen can actually come out from in between the jaws during the procedure. And the answer to that is yes. If we overload the jaws, I'm showing here the jaws fully loaded, and if we want to try another specimen, then pushing it in may accidentally dislodge another specimen. Another instance when the specimen can get lost is when the jaws are kept open and dragged against the surrounding organ tissue. It's just common sense that by doing this, you may dislodge the specimen and they'll fall out. Please always keep the jaws closed when approaching the next site for biopsy. Come to it, open, and take your biopsy. That assures a good collection of the specimen between the jaws of the MultiCROC. When scoping and biopsying the stomach, colon, or duodenum, please try to position the jaws as perpendicularly to the tissue as possible. When scoping and biopsying esophagus, it is not quite possible because of the location of the scope. Use the suction technique. It's very successful with obtaining multiple sampling with the MultiCROC. Videos of the actual procedures are available and we're happy to send them to you. MultiCROC biopsy forceps reduces the procedure time, which benefits the patient and the provider. Shorter procedure time also means shorter exposure to potentially hazardous environment. Thank you very much.